Godzilla has a very tenuous relationship with the medium of animation. While Godzilla has made a few cameos here and there in series like My Hero Academia, there really isn't a well-made Godzilla anime, which sounds bizarre, right? The Netflix anime trilogy is widely regarded as one of the worst entries in the entire history of the Godzilla franchise, which is saying a lot.
Your folks will get kind of worried.
On the other hand, the series' Singular Point received very mixed reactions from fans due to its very overcomplicated plot. You would think an IP like Godzilla would have taken advantage of the limitless potential of animation. So I decided to put together a hypothetical pitch for a Godzilla animated series. Mind you, this is just for fun, and it's honestly nothing more than fanfiction. The title of this new Godzilla series is going to be called Godzilla Kaiju Armageddon. In 1954, the King of the Monsters was believed to have been slain by Dr. Serizawa's oxygen destroyer, ending his reign of terror on Japan, but in present day, a seismic event in the Pacific Ocean reveals a terrible truth. Godzilla has returned. His reawakening triggers a global phenomenon, stirring all different types of creatures from their slumber and unleashing monsters long thought to be nothing more than myths. The world stands on the brink of chaos, and at the center of it all are Yuji and Momoko Ogata. They are the great-grandchildren of Hideyuki and Emiko from the original 54 Godzilla film. The siblings, both members of the Japanese Defense Force, or the JSDF, are tasked with defending humanity against this new kaiju age. However, they stand on opposite sides of the ideological divide. Yuji is a pilot who views kaiju as nothing more than mindless disasters that must be eradicated. He believes there is no coexistence, only survival. On the other hand, Momoko is a field scientist who specializes in kaiju behavior as they start to emerge. She believes that not all monsters are enemies. She's fascinated by her family's history and her great-grandfather's connection to the legendary Dr. Serizawa. She sees kaiju as being complex, ancient beings that may not be the true villains of this conflict after all. As Japan and soon the world faces an escalating series of kaiju threats, the siblings are forced to reckon with their beliefs, their duty, and the ultimate question: is Godzilla the real danger, or is he only the thing keeping humanity from extinction? Season 1 would have a total of 12 episodes that I will go over shortly in depth. The entire gist of the series, though, is that it's a monster of the week type of show, with Godzilla himself acting as an anti-hero of sorts. He absolutely will destroy Tokyo, but can and will fight off greater threats if need be. Tonally, this series would take heavy inspiration from Terror of Mechagodzilla. That's a movie that has a great balance of out there wacky elements like Mechagodzilla, while also having rather serious moments of tragedy with the whole Katsura subplot. The series balances intense kaiju action with grounded character-driven storytelling. The fights are going to be brutal and unrelenting, pushing the limits of what animation can achieve, and it's something that live action could never really accomplish, at least if you didn't have $1 billion budget. Every collision of titans is a spectacle. Limbs get torn, flesh burns from atomic breath, and cityscapes crumble in meticulously choreographed devastation. I really want to embrace the medium of animation in a way that differentiates itself from the Godzilla battles that we've already seen in live-action films. Yet beneath all of the action and chaos, there is room for introspection and tragedy. Some monsters are mindless, but others, like Baragon and Anguirus and even Godzilla himself, display emotions, motivations, and sorrow. The series absolutely needs to lean into these nuances, making the kaiju feel more than just obstacles. Without further ado though, let's go episode by episode for Season 1 of Godzilla Kaiju Armageddon. Episode 1, Awakening. The Japanese military has long suspected that Godzilla survived the oxygen destroyer in 1954, remaining dormant beneath the sea. The JSDF secretly develops the Gotengo, a state-of-the-art warship designed to neutralize Godzilla should he ever resurface. When seismic activity signals Godzilla's return, the Gotengo is deployed for its maiden voyage, leading to an explosive confrontation between man and monster. The battle shakes Tokyo, and while Gotengo, piloted by Yuji, proves formidable, it fails to put Godzilla down. Godzilla vanishes into the ocean, leaving the world to wonder if he will return as a protector, destroyer, or something in between. The highlight of this episode would definitely be the battle between Godzilla and the Gotengo. Imagine a high-speed aerial battle where Gotengo uses advanced weaponry to keep Godzilla at bay, dodging city-sized tail swipes and countering his atomic breath with energy barriers. I want the choreography here to mimic like a high-stakes dogfight. I always love the opening scene of Godzilla Final Wars where we get to see the King of the Monsters take on the Gotengo, but I wish that fight was longer. We really only see the end of it where the Gotengo is wounded and in the ice. Here, we will get that fight. On top of that too, Yuji gets a chance to be a badass as the captain of the Gotengo. He essentially gets to be the Captain Gordon of this ship. It may seem odd that they would already have a Gotengo ready to go, but I really want to hammer home the idea that the JSDF knows way more than they're letting on. For any Evangelion fans watching, this iteration of the JSDF would function a lot like SEAL. That might be a spoiler, I don't know, but if you've seen the show, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's hidden motivations on top of hidden motivations, but they won't be revealed until later down the line. One last thing I want to say about this, I want to make sure it's very evident that the Gotengo is the aggressor in the conflict, that Godzilla is just kind of chilling doing his own thing, and the Gotengo is what causes him to basically lash out. Episode 2, Guardians of Japan. When Godzilla rampages through Japan, angered by the Gotengo, the Guardian monsters awaken to defend their homeland. Baragon attacks first and is overpowered. Anguirus and Varan engage Godzilla next, with Baragon resurrected by a lightning strike to join them. Their combined fire, ice, and wind-based attacks force Godzilla to retreat. Humanity watches in awe. Perhaps not all these monsters are their enemies, and maybe there are some good ones out there. For some of the hardcore Godzilla fans watching, it may become very clear that this episode's plotline is heavily inspired by an early screenplay of GMK, Giant Monsters All-Out Attack. That version included Varan, Baragon, and Anguirus. I really wanted to utilize that concept as a way of introducing those three monsters. Varan and Baragon usually get the short end of the stick in Godzilla stories, so I want them to have a chance to shine here. I know it may be a bit controversial though to have Anguirus be an adversary to Godzilla right off the bat, but all I'm going to say is just trust the process. Let me cook here. Not to mention, we get to see Momoko showcase her diplomacy, as she is responsible for getting the JSDF to not attack the Guardian monsters. Throughout the episode, we'll see her and her brother clash over this. I think it would really help that the audience, at first, isn't exactly sure what the Guardian monsters' intentions are. In fact, they aren't even called the Guardian monsters until like halfway through. So as a result, the audience would be divided, either finding themselves siding with one sibling or the other. I really want to make it clear that both siblings are correct, ideologically. At no point is Yuji completely bloodthirsty and wanting to eviscerate every kaiju that exists, while Momoko is a bleeding heart kaiju activist. They are both reasonable people, which I think is important if you want these characters to be likable, which is absolutely something that we need in this series. Episode 3, the Kamacuras Plague. Kamacuruses, or Kamakuri, or I don't know, Kamacuras, a legion of them, descend on Japan like an unstoppable swarm, devouring everything and everyone in their path. The individual Kamacuras are maybe about 20 feet tall, but the JSDF is overwhelmed as a massive Queen Kamacuras emerges, commanding the horde. Just as the country faces total annihilation, Godzilla arrives, drawn by the chaos. As he battles the Queen and her legion, the JSDF subtly aids Godzilla by directing attacks toward the Kamacuras instead of him. For the very first time, Godzilla does not outwardly retaliate against humanity. He ends up getting extremely wounded, but kills the Kamacuras Queen and all the little Kamacuras drones and goes back into the ocean, suggesting that an uneasy truce may very well be forming. Kamacuras is a monster that I always thought would be way more interesting and frightening as a swarm type of enemy, sort of like the Tyranids in 40k. Here we can get some human level threats. Imagine scenes of JSDF soldiers firing off against swarms of Kamacuras in the streets, helping civilians try and escape to shelters. I want this episode to really feel like a doomsday scenario, as both a way to legitimize Kamacuras as a terrifying threat, but also as a way to establish threats that are way more sinister than just Godzilla. Speaking of, this is really where we see Godzilla act as a reluctant defender of sorts. Remember that for later. Episode 4, Horror of the Deep. A new crisis emerges when the colossal Ebirah surfaces, sinking ships and destroying coastal cities. The JSDF struggles to counter the monster's amphibious assaults, but Godzilla arrives, engaging Ebirah in a brutal undersea battle that carries on to the shore. As the two monsters clash, the siblings learn that Ebirah may be a mutation caused by industrial pollution, fueling Godzilla's ongoing disdain for human interference. Even stranger, it appears that the JSDF were directly responsible for said pollution. If you're familiar with this channel, there's a very solid chance that you've seen my very controversial review of Ebirah Horror of the Deep, where I rip that movie apart and label it as my least favorite Godzilla film. I want this episode to be a chance for Ebirah to really shine and have some terrifying moments. One thing I really wanted in that movie was a sick underwater battle between Godzilla and Ebirah. We kinda get that, sorta, but here we'll get one of the most insane Godzilla water battles in franchise history. Godzilla lives in the ocean, we should get some cool underwater fights for once. Minus One really embraced Godzilla's aquatic side, and I want to do my best to try and emulate that as much as humanly possible. Episode 5. The Tragedy of the Gargantuas. The legendary Sanda and Gaira, once thought to be myths, appear when Gaira attacks fishing villages off the coast of Japan. Sanda, his more benevolent sibling, tries to stop him, but their battle devastates the countryside. The JSDF and Godzilla simultaneously enter the fray, with Godzilla viewing both as enemies. Ultimately, Sanda sacrifices himself to stop Gaira, and Godzilla leaves the battlefield, satisfied that the greatest threat is neutralized. I know a lot of people might be disappointed that the Gargantuas are one-and-done monsters here, but there need to be actual stakes to these episodes. Kaiju need to die, or else it's just monsters fighting without consequences. I think it's important to involve the Gargantuas since their original story is very much a tragedy. Throwing Godzilla and the JSDF into the mix could also add some interesting dynamics to the fight. Lore-wise, Sanda and Gaira are myths of sorts, that parents would tell their children as a way to get siblings to stop fighting one another. I'm a big fan of folklore, and I feel like this would really hammer home the thematic message with Yuji and Momoko mirroring Sanda and Gaira, especially in this episode. Yuji, like Godzilla, views both the Gargantuas as threats, while Momoko tries to convince her brother that the Sanda is trying to save humans from his brother, Gaira. This specific incident would ultimately create a small but very important fracture in their bond as siblings. Episode 6. Blood Moon Rising. A new kaiju descends from the moon and is identified as Red Moon. At the same time, Erebus, another giant creature, emerges on a remote Okinawan island. The JSDF manipulates them into fighting, only to discover that the two are mates. The JSDF accidentally kills the newborn, causing its death. The grieving parents unleash havoc upon Japan until Godzilla intervenes. In a rare moment of mercy, Godzilla spares Red Moon, who flees back into space, while Erebus' fate remains unknown. This is a straight-up adaptation of the unmade Godzilla vs. Red Moon film from the 1970s. That project really interested me given how tragic the story was, and so I want to try and bring it to life here in a very abridged way. This is really where we see a more sinister side to the JSDF, as well as a further divide between Yuji and Momoko, with Yuji heavily disagreeing with the actions of the JSDF but ultimately remaining complacent with their actions for the greater good. His attitude is, they are acting like abhorrent murderers, but what other line of defense do we really have against these things? Episode 7. Manda Rise. Tokyo Bay is rocked by a series of massive undersea disturbances. Soon, Manda, the ancient sea dragon worshipped by an obscure cult, emerges from the depths. The cultists claim that modern civilization has angered Manda, who now seeks retribution. Godzilla and Manda battle across the city and sea, with Godzilla ultimately strangling Manda unconscious. The cultists declare this to be a prophecy, one that warns of a greater monster yet to come. I really wanted to mash the Seatopians and the lost civilization of Mu together with this one, while also throwing in some Lovecraft vibes with the cosmic horror of it all with the cultists. It's important to note here though that Manda is not inherently good or evil. The cult worships the serpent, but Manda couldn't even care less about them. Like, she doesn't even really perceive them. She really only cares if someone like Godzilla or the JSDF is interfering with her dominion, hence why the battle even happened. Manda initially attacked because the JSDF provoked her. Otherwise, she's a neutral monster that just wants to be left alone, which adds to the tragedy of her character. Episode 8. Smog of Death. A rogue bioweapon project created by the JSDF spirals out of control when an experimental microorganism mutates into Hedorah, a sentient, ever-growing sludge monster. Hedorah begins consuming pollutants and grows exponentially, blanketing entire cities into toxic smog. This causes the citizens to become burned and disfigured from the toxicity. One of the victims is Yuji, who ends up losing his arm as a result of exposure to Hedorah. Godzilla, sensing the threat to his domain, takes the fight to Hedorah. In an intense, gruesome battle, Godzilla ultimately incinerates the creature with the help of the Gotengo, but its remains vanish into the atmosphere, leaving behind a very unsettling question. Could it ever return? Hedorah is my all-time favorite monster, so of course I'm going to include her. A lot of the elements here are borrowed from my Toho Godzilla trilogy pitch video. Go watch that if you're curious. The ambiguousness of Hedorah's fate solely exists because it would be neat to bring her back in another season later down the line, maybe in another form. Beyond that, I really want to try and test the waters here with some body horror, with civilians getting melted down by Hedorah's toxic waste. After this episode, Yuji will have a cool fucking robot arm, and this is important to his character because it gradually shows his humanity starting to fade as he becomes a hard and loyal soldier for the JSDF. Episode 9. The Tragedy of M. In the 1970s, Takagami, the son of Hideto and Emiko from the original Godzilla 1954 movie, and the grandfather of Yuji and Momoko, went missing while on a space expedition aboard the Moonlight SY-3. In the present, he reappears but is no longer human. He has mutated into the kaiju known as M. As M rampages in agony, causing destruction by accident, Godzilla arrives and the two monsters battle, but it's clear that M is suffering more than anything. In an uncharacteristic act of mercy, Godzilla delivers a fatal blow, putting M out of his misery. Yuji and Momoko mourn, knowing their grandfather was never truly the monster that everyone thought he was. This is yet again an adaptation of an unmade Godzilla movie titled Godzilla vs. M, from the Millennium era. I want to use this as an opportunity to continue some of the body horror elements established in the prior episode, with the transformation into M being downright horrifying and disgusting. We'll get to actually see flashbacks of Hideto and Emiko looking on with pride as their son boards the Moonlight SY-3, only to never be seen again. This ship, by the way, is not the same from Destroy All Monsters. It's more of just kind of a fun Easter egg given the name. Hands down, this is the darkest episode of the entire series, but it's also the most personal to our protagonists, as they come to realize how entrenched their family's legacy is with Godzilla. Episode 10, Judgement of the Gods. Godzilla faces off yet again against the Guardian monsters, Varan, Anguirus, and Baragon. The battle is fierce, but before Godzilla can finish them off, Mothra arrives, accompanied by her twin fairies, the Shobijin. They warn that a great threat is approaching from the stars, one that not even Godzilla can defeat alone. Now, it may appear a bit rushed to have Mothra just appear out of nowhere, but the human plotline would involve the Shobijin very early on, so in general, the episode's B story would gradually build up Mothra, with her appearing at the very end of the episode to interrupt the fight. Beyond that, I really wanted Godzilla to have a rematch with the Guardian monsters, as this will be the last time that they ever fight one another. From here on out, they'll go from being reluctant allies to being friends. How we'll get to that point though, you'll just have to wait and see. Episode 11, The Battle for Earth Part 1. Mothra rallies Earth's kaiju to stand against the cosmic threat. Anguirus, Baragon, Varan, and Manda form the Alliance of Earth's Monsters, or Earth Defenders. Suddenly, two extraterrestrial kaiju, Megalon and Gigan, arrive, wreaking havoc as heralds of an even greater force, a being known as King Ghidorah. A massive battle ensues between Earth's kaiju and the alien invaders. Just as Megalon and Gigan seem to be losing, the skies darken, a massive shadow appears overhead, and King Ghidorah has arrived. I've always liked Megalon and Gigan as a duo, at least in concept, so seeing them go up against the Alliance of Earth's Monsters would be pretty sweet. Beyond that, I'm retconning Megalon here. Originally, Megalon was never an alien, but a monster from deep beneath the earth controlled by the Seatopians. However, he's gradually been associated with aliens over the years. Even Godzilla Unleashed had him classified as an alien, so in this universe, he's an alien. Beyond the Heralds of Ghidorah, which is what I'm going to call the duo there, this is where we get to see Godzilla and Anguirus start to develop a sense of camaraderie. It was difficult to find a way to adapt the original GMK screenplay ideas while also having those monsters be allies later down the line. However, I think we can show signs of mutual respect between these former rivals that start to develop throughout their battles against these alien invaders. Circling back to Ghidorah, I really want this series to build up to him. This is Godzilla's arch nemesis, and I didn't want Ghidorah to be anything but a big event type of enemy. Making these last two episodes a two-parter would really hammer home the importance of the Emperor of the Cosmos. Episode 12, The Battle for Earth Part 2. The fate of the planet is decided in a massive destructive battle. Ghidorah, Gigan, and Megalon push the Alliance of Earth's monsters to their limits, but Godzilla steps up, leading the charge. There's a moment where Godzilla protects Varan and Baragon, which helps to kind of establish a friendship of sorts between himself and Anguirus. After a hard-fought battle, the space monsters retreat, defeated but not killed. As the dust settles, humanity realizes that they cannot rely on monsters to protect them forever. In a post-credit scene, or maybe this is just the epilogue to the episode, I don't know, the JSDF officially rebrands as the Global Defense Force, revealing that plans for the construction of Mogira, Jet Jaguar, and Mechagodzilla are already underway. The ending is very much a carryover from Godzilla's Singular Point. I love that tease, even if we never got a season 2. And on top of that, I absolutely adore the world of Godzilla Unleashed. And so the goal in the long term is to establish 4 main factions of monsters in this show: Earth Defenders, Global Defense Force, Aliens, and Mutants. Season 1 already introduced a couple of monsters from each faction, but Season 2 would put more of an emphasis on the Global Defense Force and Mutants, with the introductions of monsters like Biollante, Megaguirus, and the scrapped character of Berserk, which was this constantly evolving robotic mass. Regardless, that is Season 1 of Godzilla Kaiju Armageddon. I had so much fun writing this one, and if you liked what I had to say here, then check out some of my other pitch videos, as well as my original movies that are up on the channel right now. Again, this is just a fun writing exercise. I wanted to make something that was tonally in line with Terror of Mechagodzilla, where there were moments of inherent tragedy with some awesome kaiju action. I suppose this could just be an animated series and wouldn't have to be an anime. If I'm being honest here, the title is just shorter with it saying anime rather than animated series, so if you have a problem with that wording, then, I don't know, go outside or something. Really quick, I just want to announce that I will be attending G-Fest in Rosemont, Illinois on Sunday, July 13th. If you're planning to go, feel free to say hi. This will be my second time at G-Fest as a creator, and I'll be walking around most of the day checking out the panels and vendor booths. If you see me, don't be afraid to come up and say hi. Hope to see you there. Anyways, with all of that out of the way, I'm Cole McCormick. You're watching Firewood Media. Consider becoming a member to support the channel. It's kind of like Patreon, but it's right here on YouTube. For just $1.99 a month, you'll receive member shoutouts and your name featured as an executive producer in all of our film projects. There's also going to be members-only videos, as well as exclusive behind-the-scenes content that you won't find anywhere else. You don't have to if you don't want to, but it's an extra perk for anyone that wants to support the channel and what we do here, while getting some unique content on the side. Either way, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.